heavily on that. And if they end up becoming a target of this ESG non-conformitors, you need to find another tier 2, a backup plan for that supplier, which can result in operational risk as well. And obviously litigations, as I already mentioned, that anything can also cause a legal challenge. And there's a legal fight that happens in the background, where one has to keep proving themselves that either they were not aware of it or they've done the right practices, but there was some other challenges which has impacted this situation. So these are kind of some of the risks that we see. Now, why are we talking here in this room today? Purely because India is in the spotlight. We all are loving the fact that today, when most countries are going through recessions, India is still a growing economy. It's one of the fastest growing economies. We are talking about Make in India. We are talking about so many campaigns and projects where we are promoting that we need China +1, and that +1 is India. So when we speak about India at such a high level, we need to obviously be aware that that also brings all the requirements of the legislation that other countries have made up. So when you think about the global legislations, maybe India might not have a very stringent legislation which says that you need to comply for ESG. But if a company in India is supplying to any European companies or any US company, and if there is even suppliers coming from China, in such a scenario, the global legislation gets activated. So I'll give an example to help you understand this better. There is a client of ours who is a major solar company in India. They manufacture solar panels. Now, this particular solar panel company has been supplying the solar panels to US. But in US, there is a legislation called as Uyghur Forced Labor Act. What Uyghur Forced Labor Act says is that any businesses which has got any form of raw materials, not the final product, any form of raw materials also coming from China's specific region called Xinjiang area. There's a Xinjiang area in China where there are a lot of passed a legislation which says, and there was almost a $10 million order stuck in the US custom for an Indian entity who was sourcing some form of a chip from a Malaysian entity. And that Malaysian entity was sourcing some form of a raw material from this China Xinjiang area. So you can see the impact that it makes. Uyghur Forced Labor Act, yes, that's the one that you see there. UFL.
Because when I saw, your slide is not visible at other end. First slide I can see.
Okay.
Now?
Take it, check out.
See, this now, US comes with all these restrictions in China, but all their manufacturing is in China itself. Everything the people in US come to China for their manufacturing.
True.
So what type of that is not
Double standards.
Yeah, to be very honest, it's going to take us a while before people can move away from China completely. Because even today,
I think it is now lifetime it is possible.
Yeah, not anytime possible. True.
While this is happening, I'll ask you a question. See, most of the companies in India don't have any restriction, or they don't have anything to impose them to start using all these facilities or maximum. So how is it going to affect Indian companies?
There are two ways how it will. One, as I mentioned, if they are in any form supplying to international customers.
And they are suppliers from
international market. So if there is, say, a shipping company in India, which has got suppliers outside of India, and they are also exporting outside India, or they're giving services to a global client, then in that case, in all form of ESG.
Or a software company, because India is a mainly IT hub. So for an IT company, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, service industry is not a top priority right now, but honestly, even a service industry has to disclose. So in our example, I have Infosys registered with us in ACHILLES, because they are providing that.
So for example, the shipping companies who are ship owners,
yes,
some of them operating ships here, how will it affect them, and how do you make them start implementing? Why should they implement?
Sure. So with this ship owners, they will have clients which are outside India whom they are servicing, or are you saying the owners are also in India? They
are suppliers of probably the workforce. They are not supplying any stuff or anything that is manufactured. It's a company which is giving workforce. And that's it.
But workforce to whom? To a client
shipping company which is
some client international?
Greek.
That's right. So if they are in the Greek owner, that means there is a legislation in the EU which says that any subcontractors that you are hiring, even if they are laborers, resources, staff, You need to ensure that their employer has not posed any form of modern slavery. I'll give an example also on this. Shipping example, let me put it up. There's a very big client of ours, which is a Norwegian client. They have their materials or sourcing coming from a supplier in Singapore. Rather, they are using a Singaporean company for the labor, the staffing. Now, when we went to do audit for that Singaporean company, Singapore doesn't have any legislation to be more, so you have a like-to-like comparison, like India. They don't have any legislation on ESG. This Singaporean company, when my team went there to do an audit, we got to know that most of the laborers there are Indian, Bangladeshi, and Pakistanis. And when we checked, we did a labor interview. During the labor interview, we got to know that they've been working for close to 27 days in a row without a single day off. No day off. They're working 14 hours a shift. And when we asked them, what about, do you know your rights? Do you know that you can actually fight back and say, I need a 1 day off? They said, I don't even have a contract. They've not shared the signed contract with me. I don't have the terms and conditions. I don't know my rights. We said, okay, what if you feel this way? Why don't you go back to your country? They say, my passport is with them. They're not giving me my passport. Why don't you ask for passport? They're saying because they have taken a bond which says you cannot leave until unless you don't serve 2 years or you pay me this much. I can't pay this money, so I have to stay.
What happens if the workers are educated here in India and they are sailing on a ship? They are employed by European owners.
Correct.
Ship belongs to Europe and they are managing ship.
Who's paying the payroll for them?
There are some funds that are allocated which are in India.
Correct. So then they will have to ensure all due diligence are. You get my point? Because they are, end of the day, the owner is India, right? The people work for an Indian company. They work there, but they are outsourced by you, right?
Acha, owner pays directly to the.
See, if it is paid from India, you have to, there has to be something with the RPS.
RPS means tell us the full form of
The recruitment and placement service license. So then there is a responsibility as a bank guarantee, everything is there that can be invoked.
No, what I'm trying to say here is that ideally, if you think from a very high level perspective, obviously we can go into detail and it can take a longer time. But if you think from a high level perspective, any businesses which is operating in India will have some way or the other the impact for two aspects. One, because they are having export services, like in some form they have international companies where legislations have come into play, or two, where they have to do this because they want to show the confidence to the investors who might be an international investor. I was coming to my second point. Because that is also there, right? Your international investor is not going to invest into your business if they don't have the confidence that you're following what the world is following, which is the ESG norms. So these two factors are forcing Indian businesses to do something about it. If I've been able to answer that. Yeah. So what could
India doesn't have any ESG
we do have, and I'll come to that. Actually, I originally had that in my slide, but I removed it because it is not applicable directly to today's code. But then I can speak about it.
They are insisting on independent directors to, go through ESG courses and all that. And this UNOPG also insisting.
Okay.
So I'll come to that, please. So when we speak about, so we spoke about all the challenges so far. Let's think about what could be an ideal best practice. How can we really tackle this? So most important aspect is engagement. We need to start proactively talking about this, just like what you guys are doing right now. CMMI is proactively taking a step to first get aware about the subject, getting them self-educated on this area so that you have some form of a knowledge to then make an informed decision whether you want to do it or not. Without having an information, making a decision, I don't want to do it, is going to be much tougher to handle. So we need to have those kind of proactive engagement, and that engagement should not be restricted to just internal, but even external. Which means educate the supply chain as well, educate your customers as well on this, and the stakeholders, everybody. So there has to be that. Then there has to be some form of a risk-based model that has to be adopted. Because when you talk about some of the examples that you mentioned, there could be some supplier who's a very small supplier with 10 employees. And there could be another supplier who's a very big global organization. So you cannot expect a similar level of strategy for a smaller against the big. You need to compare it with a likable level of the small. So in a risk-based model, what we're saying is that when there's a lower risk, you have a lesser legislation requirement and a minimum criteria met. And when it's a higher risk, we look for major level of requirement where it's a no bargain, like you need to ensure these things are met. So that kind of a strategy should be designed. We also need to have some policies and procedures, which I mentioned earlier. The basic is to start designing policies and procedures to show that you're signing up for this. So that should also be recognized by some standards, like, it's based on ISO standards or GRI standards. GRI is Global Reporting Indicator. So or maybe something to do with the Global Sustainable Development Goal standards. So there has to be some form of standards that you adapt, and based on that, start developing. Then there has to be a regular monitoring of this, because you can't be just having policies but not monitoring whether it is being implemented on the ground. So that monitoring should be done. And there should be some form of ESG parameters based on which you can gauge how the progress is happening. Because sometimes you don't give a number or a grading to it, you wouldn't know that what your journey today is, and in 5 years, what difference are you doing. So that kind of strategy should be there. And finally, you need to obviously keep communicating about what has been happening, how you've been collaborating, how this is going beyond your own company, to your supply chain, to your community, and having a more matured structure being built. So this is kind of in a 5-step trying to put together what a business could start doing. Now, who are we? Why am I talking? Why am I doing all this? It's because we've predominantly been in this industry for 35 years. So 1990 is when this business started in UK. It's a UK-based company. We are in 18 countries. We have presence all over in each and every continent. When I talk about India, I'm the first employee of India. So I'm the founding member of India. When I started 13 years ago in 2011 as a first employee. And today I have about 100 plus employees sitting right here in Mahakali Caves Road. MIDC is where our office is. And we provide solutions to more than 6,000 plus clients. And we have more than 1 lakh plus supply chain that we assess at any given point of time. So it's not 1 lakh that we've assessed total in 30 years. This is what we assess at any given point of time. And we have a program which shows that in a 5 to 6 years time, businesses have shown 50% reduction in their carbon emission. Because at the end of the day, we are doing all this to also reduce our emission. So forgetting about what legislations we have, we still have our obligation that we want to do a business responsibly. Yes. So that is another reason why Indian businesses should anyways do it, because India is also at the forefront of getting impacted. So we have clearly seen that these things have impacted. There has been a reduction in the carbon emission. These are some logos that we put up there, but honestly, we have a lot of shipping. In fact, right now we have almost a major shipping company attraction that we're getting, and we have signed up BW, Synergy. We have an MOU with Synergy. We have CP, Sea Sourcing, Oddfield. So a lot of companies who have kind of joined up with us because they've seen that there's a value in doing something on this sooner than later, because early you start, the better it is before the legislation comes into. Why? I kind of touched on these topics, but what have we witnessed through our journey? We have come across, bounded labors. I gave an example of, what happened in Singapore. I've already touched on that. We have come across excessive working hours examples. Again, an example of another factory in APAC, Asia Pacific, where we have seen an employee who was working for 27 days, and we could cross-check that against his in-time, out-time, along with his pay sheet. So there was enough evidences to prove that this has been happening. We came across a water pollution where we did a site inspection, and as part of the site inspection, we identified that there were acids of an EV or electrical vehicle automobile company are disposing of acids into the drainage which gets connected to a river. So you can imagine this river could be used by so many people for so many reasons. So clearly there's a challenge there. We've come across terms of employment, where we in 2022 and 23, we spoke to almost 7,800 individuals, of which 37% of people didn't even have their terms of employment. So they don't know what their rights are. They don't know what are their obligations. And how does Achilles really does this is we have a SaaS-based platform, which is a software as a service, we call it. It's a managed solution where we give a tool, but along with the tool, we also give our people. So our people are trained over the years. As you call it, it's like a machine which is oiled well. So we have the process and people who have been doing this day in, day out, where we not just give a software, but we give our people with it. And it starts from the journey of training the supply chain on what exactly ESG is, just like what we're doing today. It starts from training. From there, we then help them with access to the tool where we collect the data. We then go through an assurance of the data. So we check that the data is accurate, it is making sense. Then we go through the monitoring process because you might collect the data today, but if you don't maintain the data, in a year's time, it's outdated. Informations are of no use. So there has to be continuous monitoring. This is not a one-time activity, but this is a regular activity. So there's a monitoring process that is done. We then help the companies to an improve fix, which means we do a benchmarking to say that as a business, your ESG score is XYZ. In the next 5 years, we expect you to reach from year to year, and these are your milestones. So we help them through that improved stage. And then we also report on it. So we then give a very detailed report to the clients like DW and all these clients who have signed up with us to say that this is how your supply chain looks like. This is the maturity of your supply chain. These are the percentage of your suppliers who have actually embedded into the basic stage. These are the ones who have reached the advanced stage. So, we give all that detailed analytics to them, along with what level of carbon emission is generated in collectively across their supply chain and what progress they're making. So let's speak about specifically shipping industry. When we speak about shipping industry, we all know about the national logistics policy. And in the national logistic policy, it has clearly laid down 4 key points. While I won't go into detail, but if you think about it, the most important ones, the 4 points include the logistics costs. You need to ensure that, in any form, the logistic costs are reduced to make export competitive pricing wise. There's also improving the infrastructure, which is roadways, railways, all forms of infrastructure. The third most important, which is of my interest here, is to promote standardization and automation. Because when we think about data management, data analytics, this cannot be done on a spreadsheet, honestly. There are so many people, a spreadsheet can be corrupted, a spreadsheet can be managed by so many people, data, there's no track record. So it requires a digital tool, and that world is going towards AI. So why shipping be behind? So obviously the automation and standardization makes sense. And skill development. Clearly, there's more demand that people should have awareness around ESG when they're making the procurement decisions. So that development is definitely required. We call it as a modern logistics section. So how is really Achilles helped here is we have formed something called as an Achilles network. What happens in an Achilles network is we work with the industries. So in this example, I'll say we are working with the shipping industry today, where we are telling the shipping companies that we know you all have common problems. And end of the day, all shipping companies somewhere share the suppliers. So if you consider, if I give you an example of this, when we did a supplier mapping for the top 6 companies of shipping industry, we identified that 45 to 50% of their suppliers are common. Now imagine if each of these shipping companies have to ask their supply chain that this is a questionnaire, just fill this and send it to me. Imagine that supplier, who might be an MSME for that matter, or a comparatively a smaller company, now has to fill 5 versions of questionnaire because they are giving businesses to these 5 companies. It's an extra resource from their end. It's a time-based management. Time is a challenge. Resource management, cost management, everything is a challenge. And for those 6 companies, each one of them are doing a due diligence to ensure that the data collected is accurate. So the effort is multiplied into 6. So in a network effect, what we're doing is we are telling the shipping companies that become part of the shipping network for Achilles. Give your supply chain to us. We will assess to see how many of your supply chain is already part of Achilles system. And if they are part of the Achilles system, the day the company joins with us, they have access to their ready data, which means the entire assessment is already done. They don't need to go through the assessment. And any who are not in the system today will be invited to join the system, in which case when the supplier joins, they pay for joining, not the client. So from a cost perspective, the shipping company is not paying, kind of for every single supplier. They'll pay a license fee, but they're not paying for every single supply due diligence. They are only introducing Achilles to that company. The company is getting the due diligence done through us. And when they get the due diligence done through us, they are not just visible to you as a customer. Now they're visible to all our other clients in shipping sector. So they see a value, ROI is there. There's a return on investment for them. They're investing for one company, but in a bargain, they're getting 5 other companies who's now seeing it. So that's a network model. So if you see that graph over there, you see that every company, bigger or small, will somewhere have a connection. They have somewhere overlap. So why not work and address this problem as a community and as a group, association, or whatever word that you use, rather than everybody trying to handle this themselves. So this is an example that I've given here is what does a network effect does. In UK, we have a network for utilities, which is, all the water, electricity, all these businesses have come together to do an assessment through Achilles for their supply chain. there are 65 organizations in UK who have come together. This includes the public companies as well, the government companies, listed companies, government companies, and private. All of them have come together. Among that 65 businesses, there are 7,500 suppliers who are registered. So those 7,500 suppliers go through an assessment. On average, each client is saving approximately 500,000 pounds, not INR, pounds. That's the money each client is saving because they don't have to go through this assessment every time for each and every one. Saving of 22 million pounds. Massive saving, which is then repurposed back to the business and back to the community in the form of doing. From a tender processing perspective, where before Achilles came into the picture, the tender process would take about 90 days to 180 days. Today, because data is already pre-qualified, the tender days have come down to 30 days. Within 30 days, they are able to start signing up customers. And the sustainability score of these customers, when they started the journey to where they are today, they've seen about 47% improvement in the sustainability score, which means it's not just the community of buyers who are progressing, but they're also helping the supply chain with them to progress. So taking care of the community in that sense, wherein they're ensuring that the customers or the suppliers with whom they've been doing business for years and years are not left behind. They are also growing with them and their sustainability scores are also improving. When we did this analysis for shipping companies, or honestly, when we looked at the questionnaire that they've been designing, the 6 companies that I mentioned about, 89%, in fact, not 82, 89% of their questionnaires are already captured by Achilles. So imagine the starting point. There's only barely a small minimum data which was not captured, but 89% of the data was already captured. And there is a kind of a table there which explains that, which sections are these questions from. So you can see that there's some percentage of questions in the EDI sector, EDI section, financials, government and cyber area, carbon, quality, health and safety, environment, all the sections, company sector, the company information and shipping, everything. All of that has already been covered. And the number of matches that you can see in there from each of those sectors. Each section, for every single category, we are approximately meeting around 80 to 90%, except for one, which is around 54%. That is the, I think it's the company one. Yeah, company S, I don't know. There's one category where it is only one particular company. Oh yeah, we didn't write the name of the company because we wanted to be confidential. There was one company who had only 54% of overlap. But everything else, if you see, the average is 89 to 90% overlap. So that's the kind of ready data that is available. And that is why we have now a lot of shipping companies coming to us saying that we would like to sign up. The signing fee is very minimum, and that way they get access to all this pre-qualified data. And the companies, the other shipping companies who would love to do business with these clients that we're talking about, are registering with us as a supplier, so that they can get themselves qualified to have further business. So finally, to summarize everything, if you think about it, sustainability is not going anywhere itself. Honestly, it's going to be here, whether we like it or not. Today, maybe the legislation is not there, tomorrow the legislation will come. But some way or the other, it is impacting every business. And the due diligence are only getting difficult day by day because people are expecting that if not through assurance, at least start having disclosures, which means at least start telling us honestly that we don't have this. We are not doing this to me. It's okay to start with that, but at least have that realization or that kind of first step that we would want to do something about it, and now tell us how we go. So there has to be, if you see, there's a lot of evidences that every country is heading towards it, every industry is heading towards it. Investors are also asking for this, they're demanding for this. There is green licensing happening, green financing happening. Banks are charging higher interest rate if you're not able to show your interest or your your commitment towards ESG. So there is an impact that way. There's a lot of technology advancement happening, which requires this level of due diligence to be done. So overall, there's a growth happening in this domain. Sooner or later, it will impact every industry. The fact is that how soon you want to be the first one to get there. Because the sooner the journey starts, the better it is when it comes to the legislation coming into play. You are already a step ahead. And let's not forget the competition part. Clearly, when you start sooner, the competition is on your side. Like, anybody else who doesn't start is losing out on the opportunity. So I know many people, when I've gone to these presentations, have said, ma'am, this all sounds good. But who's giving us the money for this? You know, what, why do we pay for this? How is ESG giving businesses its return? That's why I included this slide to actually tell people that historically, for customers who have signed up with us, have actually seen that they have been recovered much more than what they've invested. And if I think about, if I state the study done by Wharton Business in 2024, they have actually, through their study, they have claimed that 9.2% of increase in sale has happened year on year if the companies have embraced ESG. Because end of the day, what are we talking about? We're talking about, managing your waste better. That is only going to save, have the resource utilization. We are talking about water consumption to be managed, which will only give you back in some way, or energy consumption. So everything in some way will give it back. But yes, there is an initial investment required, just like any businesses, any new concept. Initially, there is some form of a commitment required, but gradually it is going to give back. And if you look at McKinsey's study as well, the operating profit has increased, but it is going to 60%. So there are enough studies to actually say that it gives back. It's just that it will take a while and it will not give you back on day one, but with the time, it's going to give you back much more than what has been invested.
So how is CSR related to ESG?
CSR is a very small part of ESG, I would say. It's part of the social. Yeah.
What goes 20% rise in Costco is a big,
yeah.
Like a bulk wholesale shop.
Correct. I'll tell you how it goes back is if as a customer, as a consumer, let me say we us in the room, we are also becoming very conscious too. And if you get to know that there is a particular product that you're going to buy in the market and it has, in a very harsh way, I have to say there is blood in that product, which means there is some form of wrong practices. As a consumer, I have stopped buying. Let's say COVID is an example. So many people boycotted China products. Why we did that? Because we didn't want to do business with from a country or a place where we see that there's any form of wrong practices. So CSR initiatives helps in that way. That if any business is doing a massive CSR initiatives, they win the confidence of the consumers who feel like, oh, I want to, tag along with this brand because I know they're giving back this. So in that sense also, the volume increases, the demand increases.
Basically, if you take example of Costco is a wholesale thing, and so the prices are very low, and then they have a refund policy of 6 months or something. So that is one of the they have put down everybody else. Yeah.
That's true. Every businesses will have their own strategies to tackle this. Yeah. So this is the final one, which is a video, but I don't know if people on the system will be able to listen to the audio. I don't know. How is the share?
I think they will.
Okay, so I'll just play it. It's just to summarize my entire session by.
In 2015, it's not allowed. The United Nations adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals as a universal call to action.
Yeah, no problem.
In 2015, the United Nations adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals as a universal.
Are people on the screen to listen to audio?
To end poverty, to protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity for everyone. They are a collective promise to leave no one behind. But time is running out.
Today, only 15% of the targets are on track, with many going into reverse. The SDGs need a global rescue plan.
There are portals which are this.
1.2 billion are living in poverty.
Sashi, can you hear this voice? Sound?
Facing hunger by 2029. More than 49.
This is the video you want to say.
Yeah.
No, we want to view it so that even they see the.
Ideally, the virtual, they can hear the audio, but you need to do the setting. I don't know if the setting is. It's okay if we don't want to do this, we can just skip the video. But the video was just to give a feel of what is the problem.
8 million are here in India. Due to UNICEF, 100 million children are forced work. That's 1 in 10 worldwide. alongside these social issues, we are facing a triple planetary issue of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Carbon dioxide levels have soared to their highest 3 million years. Temperature increases have put us on the verge of the abyss. Biodiversity is now declining at an alarming rate. 1 million species risk extinction. 10 million hectares of forest are disappearing every year. In response to the UN goal, governments are introducing new regulations requiring businesses to take responsibility for their actions. And businesses that get it wrong are finding themselves subject to negative PR. The desire for cheaper services fuels modern slavery, environmental pollution, carbon emissions. Our purchasing decisions hold power. It's more important than ever to understand the implications of what we are potentially participating in. More than ever, businesses have to take the lead. Let's make an effective transition to net zero.
Yeah. So finally, that video usually kind of towards the end leaves an impact that why it's important.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully, I mean, I know you wanted me to show the BRSR. And how do I share the slide? So, or maybe I'll just speak about it.
Yes, speak
So
about it, yeah.
India has come up with this business responsibility and social reporting, so sustainability reporting, sorry, which is called as BRSR. This is laid down by SETI. Okay, the Security Exchange Board of India, and this is only applicable for the top 1,000 listed companies. So at this point, it only impacts the top 1,000 listed companies. But even within the top 1,000 listed companies, they have come up with a subset of BRSR, which is called BRSR code. And within BRSR code, what it has done is they have only made this eligible for the top 250 listed companies, where they have to assess their supply chain on this 9 parameters of BRSR code. The 9 parameters include things like, water consumption, liquidity management, social, energy consumption, all of this social norms, particular 9 principles. I can obviously, there are 9 principles, I can share that with you later on. So what they have done here is, initially SEBI said that they want this BRSR code for the 250 companies to be considered for any supplier where they have 75% spent. So if they have a 75% spent, this supply should be assessed on BRSR code 966. It has about 50 to 60 data points. But unfortunately, and I'm using the word unfortunately because I felt like India took a very brave step of rolling this out, but there was a lot of pushback from the listing companies that this is a very difficult requirement. So SEBI has come up with a recent consultation which happened in June, and in the latest consultation, they are proposing to further, reduce it to from a 75% spend. They will also consider 2% revenue. So any supplier who contributes to 2% of the revenue against the 75% spend, but on that 2% revenue, only they will go to the assessment. Which means that historically a listed company might have about 1,000 suppliers who have to go through this BRSR code. Today, the maximum that they will have to assess is 38 suppliers. So the volume has reduced quite a bit. So Indian legislation right now is just on that piece, but there are some specific sector legislations that are coming, wherein each sectors are coming up with some focus around ESG, and there it varies from one sector to the other. But otherwise, from an India perspective, this is kind of the major market. But in shipping, I did my check. due diligence before coming here. No one here qualifies for it, which is why I didn't really mention it.
I think this is more applicable to manufacturing.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is not
Not
correct
sharing.
one for a shipping.
Yeah, I think so.
No, but then shipping is also supposed to come to net zero by 2050. And, 2030 targets are there. So, and what do you actually mean by ethical transmission? I don't see anything other than ethical. You're not allowed to find data in shipping. Because your reporting systems are already on.
Yeah, where honestly, the word ethical transition has come to the fact that there is still so many wrong practices happening in the world.
Shipping is very controlled, because we have the European Union reporting system, so many things are happening. Now, every year we have to report everything to in India to IRS and then monitor. And I think it's quite.
It could be for your own businesses, right?
Yeah.
But when it is ethical transition, it's your businesses upstream and downstream. Upstream means your customers. And
Yes,
downstream
I
is
understand.
your- I'm sorry, but I just thought I'd clarify. So in that sense, it is.
Ma'am, I just want to,
Yeah, address me at SMITHA. I'm really very.
yeah, if I may, I would like to share a real life situation. We have talked about, something very situation where we have been impacted.
Okay.
I'm basically I'm connected with the field of insurance, marine insurance, especially P&I. What I do is basically I help people to place their marine insurance, P&I, owners and charters. Now, I had a client, very happy with us, but that particular name I can't disclose, obviously. They were basically involved in the transportation of thermal coal. Okay. 2-3 years, everything was fine. They're very happy with us. We were happy with them. Suddenly, I got a note saying that they will not be able to give the insurance cover because their insurers, based on these ESG criteria, they will not support any company or any outfit which is predominantly thermal coal. Okay. If you have got a mixture of thermal coal or other things, fine. But now this assurance of mine, only thermal coal. So I went to them, they said, I can't handle because we handle only this business and I cannot import something just to satisfy your requirement. So I lost the business. But the funny thing is that immediately there were many others, all European. It's not that, some big country, all European top people, they were too ready to fill up the gap. So what are your comments on that?
I'll put it this way. The
Because
way the
what happened is-
legislations are designed today, unfortunately, there will always be some gray loops. There will be a reason why some legislations are coming into play because they want to encourage local businesses. That could be one factor. There could be legislation coming into play because they worry that there's a risk of outsourcing or, using a country.
No, I'm not very clear, madam. Let's straight, please don't use any jargon.
Yeah.
Here, there are top European companies, European insurers, all A rated plus AAA, whatever. One of them say that I can't support my ESG board. Others, but they have no problem. And they are not,
So they
some
have no
Singapore
problem
company and
using
all
who
that.
you're saying.
Sorry?
The others are using Indian or they're using US.
No, that's Indian. It's basically global. See, what I'm saying, insurance in marine is very global. No, and actually in India, you can buy P&I insurance directly from a foreign source. Okay. Now here, I'm giving a concrete example that one particular insurance in Europe, they said I can't support, but there were several others. All many others said top. They're not any, Singapore company that no. But then tell me, what are your views on that? How do you sort of implement a good idea, but others never follow?
I think there are two ways how I look at it. One is maybe they have not taken this seriously and there will be some form of legislation implication. Or maybe the legislation is laid out, or legislation is laid out where they've explored, like as I said, the listed companies. Listed companies, there are only 1,000, but in that 1,000 only 250 and in that 250 only 2%. So maybe there is some.
Anyway, I think let's stop at that because this is not the case that I'm referring to. If something happened, what I'm trying to point out is these are all fine, these theories and academics and all that. But when it comes to the brass tacks, people will only talk about functioning influence. And there are examples with galore. That's all I want to
No,
point out.
I'm not surprised with that is all I'm saying, because I know that not all companies have signed up for it. Not all countries have signed up for it. Not every country has reached to the place where there is a maturity that every businesses are following the norms. we are still coming across examples where they're finding loopholes and still doing things which they're not supposed to do. So in that sense, I'm saying that it's not, this is black and white. Nobody's
See,
calling black and white.
there is this maritime anti-corruption network. How many shipping companies have signed up in India? Not even one.
That's
Not
what
even
the
one.
choice that
Who
people
have
have.
signed up are some Masa companies. Not single Indian company has signed up. See, let us get practical here. It is not possible. So many times I have met Mr. Deepak.
So that's what I wanted to point out.
Possible.
There is a
It will have.
gulf of difference between what,
What we want and what we
ideal
have.
situation and what happens on the ground.
Exactly, that's true.
Okay, I would like to ask anybody who would like to ask a question who's on Zoom. Can you please put your hands up or give an indication? Can you hear them? Can they hear you? Shashikumar, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. There's a chat I put on your WhatsApp. Can you just have a look at that?
The chat.
I'll read it out for you. Recently, the government of Karnataka were looking at passing a legislation to increase the working hours for IT professionals to 14 hours per day. Isn't it important that the persons whose legislate are educated in ESG?
So is it important?
Isn't it important?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this entire Karnataka example of 14 hours, we were also scratching our head like, how did this even go through? Because honestly, it's not allowed. You can't go beyond, I think the statutory requirement is 9 hours per day or something like that, or 10 hours. Yeah,
That
10
is
hours.
for shore labor, but
Yeah.
for our poor seafarers, it is much
It's
more.
even much more, unfortunately, that happens, but otherwise, so I don't know how that went through, or even if that will ever go through. Because it's not something which, if these businesses are supporting global organization, they will have a hard time with ESG. They will obviously not meet the legislation requirement. So I'm closely watching and I'm still wanting to see if this goes through.
This 14 hours a day probably is 5 times a week from 90%. So the idea of maintaining the work hours in a week or a month should be maintained for it.
No, here is
Coming
Sonia.
from where the statement.
14 hours a day.
It's 14 hours a day.
Yeah, so 5 days a week probably is the working time. And 14 into 5 can be one of the criteria. The Saturday, Sundays probably can be
But then
or they have a rotation system also.
They still exceed
it exceeds the norm.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So it is going to increase, but not what we are expecting, 7 into 14.
See, that I think Narayan Murthy started something. No?
Yeah, it's all kind of that and it was quite debatable.
Captain Kapil Dev Bahl, sir, can you put in your question?
May I ask this verbally or should I write it down?
Verbally.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Ms. Shetty, and thank you for the informative presentation. Like your company, there are not many in India, located in India, ACHILLES.com, and I want to ask whether your company and such companies who do work on the ESG spectrum, are you accredited by a body which is recognized? That means what empowers you to collect this data and then disseminate it?
Sure. Very good question, and thank you for asking, because I do get this question being asked at various forums. So we are an ISO certified and we follow the norms of GRI and UN Sustainable Goals, SA 8000 NEBOSH. So we are very well accredited, and we are not an assurance company. So if I may be very clear here, we are not a auditing agency. We are a service provider. And as a service provider, the solution that we provide is very well meeting all the norms, the legislations and the standards that are required, not just in India, but even globally. So in that perspective, yes, we have all our papers in place. If I've been able to answer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sudhir, just scroll down. The mouse. I think it is already down there.
Anybody else?
The last one. The last one. Agwani has got his flow.
He's always.
He's on the press.
That's what
So SMITHA, I think we need to you need to meet more people, more companies to, awaken them in their business.
Yeah, I would
I think
appreciate that if there could be some one-to-one meetings with some of them, and I can, kind of help
See,
them.
actually, madam, what is happening now is from this year. See, we are, as I mentioned, highly regulated and everybody is following to it. See, net zero by 2050 it doesn't look that easy also.
Yeah.
So all companies are busy working on these things. So first, this year is focused on what IRS is, like there are so many on carbon index indicator or CII norms.
Yeah.
All our Indian ships are in D or E. We have to raise up the level. So work is going on that.
So this
Because
work that we.
all companies are focused on this, lowering the carbon.
CDP rating you're talking about. So, no,
Yeah,
that's.
this is EXI and
Yeah. Carbon index.
Oh. No, we've come across that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I still feel that the one opportunity that everybody has here is to try and explore these network. Because it's trusted by your own community, right? There's a shipping companies who have signed up for it. They're using us. There is Indian company from that synergy. I'd shared this
Synergy
with
is Synergy, basically.
headquartered in Singapore and Chennai.
Chennai is the head office.
Yes, yes. So I had been to Chennai to meet them. That's how they signed the appointment. So, yeah, I feel that there's that opportunity where one can at least give it a start by understanding what has to be done.
Correct.
And take it up from there, one day at a time, as I said.
Any more questions from the offline audience?
Yeah, I think I have one. But just like, ESG, start with environment and social. So if you uplift the social income something, it is it's a reversely done the environmental requirement. Suppose to uplift social, you have to square something environmentally, then only this can be there. So how is the compatibility said between
Why would there be an impact in social environment if you uplift the social in the sense of right?
Because if you have to upgrade yourself, then there has to be some exploration of the environment. Or the upcoming country or the country is coming up, the country, that was not coming to that same land. That they are more stuff, but they have to develop. For develop, they have to, have to more require
So
of these
here we are
things.
talking about double materiality in that case.
Yes.
So I'm
why
sorry to
different?
use the word double materiality as a jargon, but I'll explain what you're trying to say. You're trying to say here is as we grow infrastructure for better facility for social, we are also impacting the
Exactly.
environment in the bargain.
Yes,
And that is also covered in ESG as a double materiality. In a double materiality, what we say here is, if you are trying to progress as a nation, indirectly you're also impacting the nation by using more resources or polluting the air. So as a businesses, everybody who is into high manufacturing sector, mining sector, are also being made compliant towards double materiality. They need to check and identify that what actions of theirs as a part of the progress is impacting the nature, and they need to take, do some form of research and development to avoid that kind of thing. There is a company that I know of, which is a very popular cement company, big brand in India, and maybe you all would have guessed it by now. They have a particular manufacturing unit very close to the shore. And this particular cement factory has been to increase their production so much that they're growing in two folds. But while they're doing that, they are kind of impacting, the pollution is getting created. There is some form of, carbon emission that is increased. And because they're very close to the seashore, that seashore is further impacting their own business, which is creating a loss. So that is called double materiality, wherein while you grow as a business, ensure that you don't grow at the risk of the polluting the environment. So I don't think the social will ever say that you compromise with anything. We are talking about balancing both at the same time and have this all covered in every area.
Yeah, that always require a cost. So that is my question.
Which is why for the cost I said initially everything is an investment, but in a long term it's a gain.
Yeah, for example, Metro Line 3,
Yes.
Metro Line 3,
Yes.
the RA, that's a concrete
Yeah,
example.
yeah, it's a very good
You have to pay the
example.
price.
Exactly.
And I don't support these things honestly.
Yeah,
As a business, I'm saying something, as a person, I'm.
But sir, in Mumbai, any project is being a cost for environment. Why only metro? In it's an unfortunate scenario.
What was the example he said?
I gave an example to drive home the fact that we talked about, all this. And the delay was costing enormous amount of money.
Yeah.
So ultimately we were paid. The cost of interest and all that. That's something, okay, fine. I get your point, man. You have to have a compromise and all. But to start with, in fact, India is saying that today you're talking about a lot of things, but what is right for the West may not be right for the country like India.
Absolutely,
Yes.
And
So,
this is a very.
all this, lot of things for Indian context or maybe even China, we have to adapt it. We have to have a very different kind of standards.
I'm one of those who echo that because when we started the business in India 13 years ago, Indian companies do not know what ES and G is. We had to even start from there and they're like, "Isse mujhe paisa nahi milega. Why should I do this?" And
Not
when
only
we
that,
spoke about
CBDR, we are
Yeah.
pushing, India is pushing for CBDR.
Not only
Common
that,
but differentiated responsibilities.
see, India is got miles to go to. reach
Yeah,
the-
exactly.
Now Europe is wanting to push all.
Because they are already developed.
They already developed.
Exactly what I'm
They
saying.
also extracted right.
Only
That's
the
exactly what I-
importing company has to pay the cess. Exporting company doesn't have to pay. Importing company is paying, so we are the highest payer.
Correct.
everyone
Correct.
here.
So there's an imbalance.
Yeah, but
There
then
is,
we
and that's
have
I said, what I say here is from the subject perspective.
No, fine.
Personal opinion
I-
could be very different.
No. Your point very well taken, but only thing is that when we are talking all that,
Yeah.
we have to have the perspective. in
Ultimately,
there.
you want to achieve
What
over
is-
there. That is
Yeah.
correct.
See, end of the day, what we are talking about here is don't damage the planet. Don't exploit
Absolutely.
the people. I don't think for this,
Absolutely. There
we
is-
need to
there
say
can be
that why
no
West is
opinion about.
telling. Yeah, I think for this, we don't need to say why West is telling me this. We all have that conscious effort that yes, I agree I should not exploit my people and I agree I should not harm my planet. Whether what West is doing is secondary. So what I echo is forget about the West. I agree I'm in India, I need to follow Indian culture. But let's handle our,
Yeah.
let's handle our issue.
Man, why India, in America, if the Trump wins, they'll say the offshore sector is going to open up, That's a huge thing.
Every political change is going to change
That
the
is what,
dynamics.
then,
Yeah.
then,
We all know it. Today,
So,
yes.
what I'm saying is that-
Sorry, continue the discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I would like to honor SMITHA with Captain Philip.
This was not required, the bouquet was given. That was-
Here are esteemed guests.
Thank you so much, man, for coming here.
I hope I've been able to add value and work.
The subject is being discussed everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, when our independent directors were today asked to go by the MCA through this EST code. थोड़ा आगे आइए, थोड़ा.
Let's.
Well, Trustee Jain.
We didn't expect any of this to happen. It is really.
We are sailors.
I can see also.
No,
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Come.
All of us.
Yeah.
You have the pride of the.
Yeah, it's like.
Would you please allow that,
Or will, you want to address it? If you okay, then we take it from here. All of you come. Take the
Other
picture
side?
from here.
Other
Because
side?
the time your guests there. also.
Time here.
Come.
Yes, sir, actually, there.
Yes,
Heads are off. Should be handled.
थोड़ा टेबल पर टच कीजिए।
वो कैमरा थोड़ा ऊपर करना।
ओके
नहीं अजून अजून
फर्स्ट ठीक है।
That's all. No. You should have a.
Yes.
Where are we seeing?
Good question.
We'll have another view.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now request Captain Srinivas to enter a vote of thanks.
Okay, good evening, everybody. It is my profound honor and pleasure to give a vote of thanks. Madam, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking your time out and enlightening us on this very important subject, which is today globally being discussed at every forum. And well, it is part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you so much, and I'm sure many of us would here take it forward to your own companies and would probably you can give a presentation there. It will be more useful and more effective. Yeah. Then thank you so much, Vivek Bhandarkar ji. Captain Vivek is my colleague. We work together here. And he is the Secretary General of CMI for organizing this wonderful evening with and the Deputy Master, of course. First he is organized it. I think Deputy Master is Captain Mohan Naik. I think Captain or Master Captain MP Basin must have been busy with some work, otherwise you would definitely have been here. And I must thank all of you. I must thank all of you who are attending this program online. And thank you so much for having taken out from your office and work. I know all of you all are busy being in the maritime industry. Works start sometimes late in the day with match with European and Western timings. I must especially thank all of you who have taken so much of trouble in this Mumbai traffic to come here to travel from Powai. I know you must have taken at least 1 hour. I think it is so far. And the press, especially thank you, the maritime press who is here, Sailor Today, Gagan Pandey, and who else? Marex. So everybody is there. So thank you so much for the wonderful coverage. This organization requires a lot of trust, so we are working towards going more towards the press. Thank you so much. Please enjoy the evening, have some snacks. And of course, our office staff who have worked so hard, Sudhir and Mr. Kumar Dalla. And of course, the CEO who is there, Captain Shri Kumar.
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and please have some snacks or tea or coffee, whatever you like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very but something.
I hope I've been able to at least give you some.
Wait for the proper idea.
So I'm closing for now, leaving the
Apart from what I.
meeting.
Now that I personally believe that.